He's been around, man, I don't know.
On there. I call to order the tax increment reinvestment zone number 1 and Power Center Board meeting to order on Thursday, April 14th, 2022 at 9 a.m. I'd like to ask Terry Barber if he would be so kind to do the invocation.
Yes, sir. Bow your heads with me, please. Our Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning asking you to be with us on this committee, to help us make the decisions that need to be made to help things move forward for the city of Terrell. We ask you to be with us all and help us to make the right decisions and what's best for all. Please be with our first responders and keep us all safe. And it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Discuss and consider approval of minutes from August 4th, 2021, TIRZ number 1, Power Center Board meeting. August 4th, 2021 of the minutes. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to read over the minutes. Is there any comments, complaints, discussion?
I'll make a motion, we adopt the minutes.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Excellent. Moving right along. Since it's been 8 months, new business must be full.
Still you want to do the vote?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we had a motion and a second, but I need a vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we get a vote to accept the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Since it's been about 8 months, new business must be pretty full today. So 4.1, discuss update on current projects, and 4.2 are going to be combined, discuss downtown project manager.
Absolutely. So, guys, I appreciate very much everybody being here. I've got a gigantic PowerPoint presentation that Don's going to bring up for me. Y'all know our ethic here has been don't bring in to meet just for the sake of meeting and looking at you and chatting. We want to, when we meet, we want to do business together. So today, I'm going to go through several things that are going to require votes over the next few weeks and months, and get you oriented on them so that you can be comfortable moving forward. At the end of my gigantic presentation, the next agenda item is a meeting schedule, and I do think we're going to have several things to be voting on soon, and we're going to want to make sure that we are all together several times here over the next couple of months. So with that, and then we'll also do a little executive session. I'm going to bounce through this. Dawn, am I allowed to use this exciting clicker? So let's talk about downtown projects, and that's going to be the bulk of what we talk about here. So you've got a downtown plan, you've got water, sewer, drainage, and pavement we're doing in the South Alley, and in many other roadways downtown. North Alley is currently ongoing. We've got quiet zones, US 80, Spur 226, complete streets, Anderson Building, and Griffith Building. Is that me? Gosh, I hope not.
Yeah, mine's off too.
Okay. All right. Okay, so Anderson Building and Griffith Building, Lyric Building, British Museum, South Alley, Ash Lime Study, which was a study of the South Alley, Downtown Square, Library Community Center, Senior Center. Wow, we got a lot going on, okay? So, again, I won't go into a lot of detail on a lot of these slides. So y'all, we're going to do this style where if you don't stop me while I'm talking, then I'll just filibuster you forever. So if you have a question, man, just stop me right there, because there's so many topics here. You may as well just go ahead and ask and raise your hand. So we did that downtown plan in 2017. This is a little quote from then, nice little photograph of downtown. And the idea essentially in the downtown plan was to say, let's do a lot more downtown. Let's really get busy reinvesting in downtown. And we've done small things up to 2017, but we really never got very robust about it. So we've been doing a series of things to try to get much more robust. In the 2019 county bond program, there were basically 3 things that impacted downtown in the county bond program. One is the bypass out on the west side of town, which is that Los Lomas crossing of US 80. That really just helps take traffic out of our central city and helps us with quiet zones. But quiet zone, that was a big issue. There's funding for that in the 2019 county bond program, and also complete streets are in the 2019 county bond program. So here's where we stand on quiet zones, just real quick. There are 24 at-grade railroad crossings in the city. If you've been following the drama over there in Forney, man, these things are precious because Union Pacific wants you to get rid of these all the time. With 24 within our city limits, we really have a lot to manage there. A lot of people don't realize that whenever you drive out US 80 and cross the railroad tracks out there, you're actually crossing through the city limits, because our city limits include just the railroad track way out by Ham's Peach Orchard. So those are our crossings. We can't tackle all of that all at the same time. So we did an initial blush of a review of our downtown area. We asked ourselves, well, from a train horn noise point of view, what do we have to make quiet in order to make actual downtown quiet? And the answer is, you know, you're really sounding that horn maybe 2 miles away from the railroad crossing, depending on how fast you're going as a train. And so if you're going to approach from the east and go to Dallas, and you're going along through downtown, you might be sounding your horn for FM 148 sometime right in the middle of, say, South Rockwall. Right, that's how far away you might be sounding that horn. Same thing going the other direction is you may be sounding your horn for the Birch intersection. If you know where Birch is, that's hard to find, but it's just to the east of Dallas. There's actually technically a railroad crossing there, so they got to sound their horn for Birch Street over there. And so going eastbound, they're sounding their horn right in the middle of downtown for that crossing. So as we studied that, we said, okay, we got to go from FM 148 all the way to Birch Street. Thankfully, FM 148, those plans were easy to modify. They had sort of been getting a little bit in the direction of being a quality intersection for quiet zones already. We gave TxDOT some feedback about how to change their plans. They're going to go under construction with those in June, and the construction you see at the FM 148 US 80 intersection will actually accommodate turning that into a quiet zone in the future. We won't really get any statistical credit for it. The railroad won't say, Yahoo, you've done a great job, but we'll be able to have it be quiet because of the improvements that happened starting this summer. And then you go from Bradshaw all the way on through, and we've got quite a bit of work to do on each of those. The little drawing here, this is what the consultants have come up with Virginia. I can't tell you that Union Pacific has approved this. One of the strategies we're taking is we know that Union Pacific is likely to double track through downtown Terrell sometime in the next 10 to 15 years. And so we want to make our quiet zone resilient to that. You've probably heard before from other cities that you can lose a quiet zone. Quiet zone's not a permanent thing. Quiet zone is a prove it to me on a regular basis. So the way you read this is the left-hand side of the page is Moore Avenue. Virginia is right here in the middle. You can kind of see the awning where the Shell station is, and then across the street where Cowboys is. And basically what we're telling you here is those big red areas in the middle are big channels, right? That's a big old median that you can't hop over in a truck. And they're long enough so that if we put a double track, or Union Pacific puts a double track in the middle of it, you still can't weave back and forth through. Then once you're in a slot lined up so that you can't take anything around the railroad crossing, that's part of the big idea of quiet zones. The green there is more grass and greenery. The yellow is sidewalk. Obviously, you'd have some pretty heavy curbs in that area. And you can see what's happening there is we're really shutting off part of the parking lot of Cowboys, and we're shutting off part of the parking lot of the Shell station, and we're closing down access to the South Alley at that point, right? That's a big deal. That's a big change for us. And in order to get a quiet zone in that area, we're going to have a lot of impacts on the South Alley. In fact, one of the ideas we've come up with is that we're going to have to make the South Alley essentially a one-way street going westbound in order to accommodate getting the quiet zones in there. So that's just a look at what that is at this time. We also have the theory that whenever we build a quiet zone, we want to make sure that we're getting pedestrian safety in there and making sure that the crossing of the railroad track looks good. So that's a little exhibit that shows you what Virginia would look like. That hasn't been approved by Union Pacific. Yeah, please.
So what, the South Alley, if all this goes through, are just gonna be short little
Yeah,
segments?
exactly. Yeah. You might think of South Alley turns into basically, hey, I can go around the block and I can drop off, pick up, park, I can deliver goods, but I'm only gonna zip through westbound, and then I'm gonna turn back around and I'm gonna get fed back out to, like in this example, you'd enter right around where Cowboys is, and then you would go back out and you just have to go back north on Adelaide, and that'd be your only choice.
I mean, it's basically just gonna be parking and deliveries for all the businesses.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, you'll never drive from Virginia to Rockwall on South Alley again, and people do that from time to time now, yeah, all right, there you go. Here's a shot at Rockwall. Again, you can see closing the South Alley there. That dead end sign shows you what happens there. We're actually, I believe the owner already knows this, so I can say it out loud. We're working on buying that vacant lot. Everybody assumes we own the vacant lot at Rockwall and Moore. We actually don't. But as part of our downtown project, we're trying to buy that for parking. So you can see, again, here on the left-hand side, you can see the word Exxon there. That's that Scotty's Exxon place. You know, no more just free in and out right there where the oil change side of it is, right? You're gonna have to come in and make a turn. You can't just have that big free driveway out onto Rockwall. And so that's a major change for them, but we don't feel like we need to acquire Exxon or anything like that. They can keep operating. It's just a little bit more constrained there so that you can't come right out of that garage and boom right onto South Rockwall. The medians here, we don't really have room to make them as wide and grand, but that red down the middle, that's the medians that create the channelization for you. Okay? And again, we have preliminary drawings of all of those crossings that look like this right now. Right now, we think that we're probably in danger of only closing one, or at least we're going to propose to Union Pacific a strategy to get a quiet zone where we only close one railroad crossing, and that would be Delphine. If you think about, well, gosh, how many people really use Delphine? I've got Virginia, I got Delphine, and I have a bridge. Right, and so we feel like, okay, if we've got to sacrifice one to get a quiet zone, probably Delphine is the one to do. And not that we're happy about that, but you're going to have to give up something in order to get a quiet zone, in addition to all of this expense of building all of this fine stuff. So let's see. Oh, I'm going the wrong way, Dawn. All right, complete streets. Again, I'm going to go kind of quickly here, so y'all just stop me if you've got a question. So here's the complete street side of it. You've got 226, which is Virginia, and you've got what we call core zone, which is basically Rockwall over to the bridge, and that's the area where most of our older buildings are, that we want to make sure we're really doing a great job on planning that out. We've got what we call commercial transition zone going from the bridge out east, where it says focus point entryway there. I guess I'd tell you that that's a little tiny bit, no, I think that we did get that right. Sorry, I'm evaluating our own work here. We think, and we've worked with the state hospital on this, that we really need to reorient where the state hospital has its main entrance, because really, if you look at the campus at the state hospital, it was designed so that Birch would be its main entryway. And we never really have built Birch as an entryway there. You enter on Dellis, you enter on Bryn. That puts a lot of commercial truck traffic and all of the employees going down residential streets to access it. We'd rather have all of the state hospital traffic entering off US 80, and so we've got a battle plan we're working out with Texas State Health and Human Services in order to achieve that. So anyway, that's a focal point entry. The other focal point entryway would be Bowser Circle. So Bowser, you know, is the entryway to Southwestern Christian College. So one of the preliminary ideas under the Complete Steerage Project is on the west side of town, you know you're in downtown because you see, wow, that's Southwestern Christian College. That's that great looking road and that entryway and those buildings there that announce our beginning. So we want to doll up that entryway location right there at Bowser. And then on the east side of town, we want you to feel like, hey, if I've entered downtown Terrell from the east, we want you to feel like you're in downtown Terrell right at Birch whenever you are entering or going past something that would be a grand entryway for the state hospital. And then, of course, that core zone would be the major focal point where we're really aiming for a lot of good pedestrian use. So here's some basic considerations. Again, it's got to be coordinated with the South Alley and quiet zones. I'm going to have a lot of community engagement with that. We've got a firm called JBJ that does a lot of the community engagement for Dallas Area Rapid Transit. They're really excellent at that. We need a project review committee. Remember, our Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation is our Type B sales tax, and in their capital plan, they're saving their nickels so they can borrow somewhere between $3 and $5 million to be the local match for this. So I've got seed funding in the county bond program that's helping us with engineering, and that's already underway. And then we take, as a local match, the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation money. And then we go to, hopefully, my other partners here, TxDOT, Union Pacific, North Central Texas Council of Governments. I just need permission from Union Pacific, but I need money from North Central Texas Council of Government and from the Texas Department of Transportation. We've had preliminary meetings and discussions with COG and with TxDOT already, so we're trying to get them involved and make sure that they can serve on that committee with us. And hopefully that group will be able to come up with solutions that are technically acceptable to my two big ones that are decision makers. It's always nice to go to my city council or you guys or Paddock board and say, you're the final decision maker. It's a state roadway. The final decision maker is really going to be TxDOT. And then there's Union Pacific. They're really the final decision maker on the quiet zone stuff. So we've got to get them involved from the get-go and make sure that they are buying off on everything that we're doing here. We're going to do a lot of engineering, surveying, environmental utilities, traffic analysis, all that good stuff. We'll keep in mind the context zones. So each of those different zones I just showed you on that map, those will be different, right? We're not going to make it look the same throughout. So here's some options. A one-way couplet. So I'm going to encourage everybody to go drive downtown Louisville. Downtown Louisville has a farm to market road that goes through it, and probably 10, 15 years ago they said, you know what, we really need to, break this traffic up. We got too many big trucks going through downtown. How do we make that better and safer? Well, essentially what they did was to say, hey, we're going to be farm to market road on both parts of this couplet. We're going to let one direction of traffic be on one block and another direction of traffic be on another block. So if you think that through from the perspective of our downtown, basically if I'm headed westbound, I come underneath the State Highway 34 bridge, and right as I get to where Delphine is, I got to zip up somehow on a little S curve and get myself to Nash, and I got to go westbound on Nash all the way maybe to Rockwall, maybe to Hattie, something like that, and then I get back on Moore Avenue. And then likewise on the eastbound direction, hey, I'm always on what's currently US 80 down Moore Avenue, but for that moment where I'm between, say, Hattie and the State Highway 34 bridge, I'm shifted over where I'm just in the middle of what's our current roadway. What does that allow us to do? Well, now I can basically take 2 lanes of traffic and I can give that to be wider sidewalks. So imagine our downtown with 12-foot additional sidewalk space in front of all those buildings. Now you're going to feel like the pedestrian is the king of that zone because there's going to be so much more space associated with that. So saying that's cheap and easy, right? But doing that is expensive and difficult, and there's a lot to be proved out to say that that's feasible. So we'll study that. We'll take a look at that idea. We've already met with TxDOT about it and kind of talked through some pros and cons on that. Eliminating left turn lanes, that's a completely separate idea, right? So if I just get rid of the left turn lanes down there, now I can give 6-foot additional sidewalk on each side of the road, right? But how do I turn left? Well, every time I want to turn left, I'm going to have to slow down the traffic behind me. That's got a traffic calming effect, so maybe that's a good thing all on its own, and there's pros and cons with that from a turning movement and speeds and all that sort of thing. We could reduce lane widths or remove lanes. If we were to remove lanes, right, both of those first two options say, hey, I got at least 2 through lanes the whole time. If I eliminate a lane, I'm probably going to have to go to the Texas Transportation Commission. I'm going to have to ask Austin for permission to remove a lane. And they used to say yes to that, and they say no to that these days. So we're hard pressed to ever get rid of a lane of traffic going through that area. It used to be that if you were just really dead set about getting rid of traffic through your downtown, you could actually say, hey, turn that back to me. We'll just take responsibility for that, take that off of the state system. You guys go take US 80 around on 20 and then go up 429 with 80 and blah, blah, blah. And we'll just redesignate it so that's just a local road. And TxDOT has really now taken the position of, gosh, they've seen that happen in other places, and their opinion these days is to say, no, we don't like that. Because that means that all of those cars still want to go that same place, because even when you take the state highway or US 80 off of it, the trucks still wanted to go that way. It still was an efficient route for them, and so they're normally saying no to that. The last option here is, well, what would happen if we reduced or eliminated the parallel parking? One way you might say, okay, great, that gives me wider sidewalks. I get 10-foot more sidewalk if I do that. Well, that sounds nice, but how many of those businesses down there are going to say, no, 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 that's my parking for my customer. I need that parking. So I view that as kind of a really difficult sell. There's probably 1 or 2 places downtown where you can get rid of that, but if it's not contiguous for the whole thing, did you really make a difference for the pedestrian, right? Cost, funding, grants, all of that's going to be major importance. Setting priority, phasing, implementation. Frankly, the easiest thing to build on here is the one-way couplet, because what you do is you build Nash first, right? You finish that, you make that beautiful and pretty and great, and then you start running trucks and blah, blah, blah westbound on Nash, and then that makes the other part of it much easier to construct. So if you're worried about impact on businesses, you pick one-way couplet, but we may not be able to accomplish that for other reasons. So there's a lot of considerations there, and we'll have a project review committee working on that to try to sell that idea. Any idea you've got, any concerns you've got along the way, we want to hear them, and we'll have town hall meetings on it and that sort of thing as well.
Excuse me, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm sure y'all have, but what they have done in Mineola seems to work really well with that. You know, it has the angled head-in parking like we used to have years ago here.
Yeah.
Is that something that's been looked at?
Yeah, I mean, if you took the left turn lanes out and put angle-in parking in, then you would essentially be back to what the city had, I'm told, and I've seen pictures, that's basically the setup in this city in 1983 that we got rid of to put the medians and the median bunkers and whatever you want to call those things. You know, and I guess that's an all things old or new again, you know, so I would call that just sort of part of that left turn lane analysis, right? Yeah. That would be the option of saying, hey, we're just going to get more parking out here, and that's certainly an option that we'll look at when we look at the left turn. When we look at removing left turn lanes, that'll be a consideration, yeah. Yeah. Here's some of the basic next steps. We've got about a $920,000 work scope from our consultant on some of the next steps here. There's an enormous amount of surveying to be done to figure out, well, really, do we know where everything is? If we're going to put one-way couplet out here on Nash, number one thing TxDOT's going to say is, oh, if that's a state roadway, I don't want a water line down the middle of it or sewer line down the middle of it. Okay, great. You see what we're doing out at 205 and 148 right now? we're moving our water and sewer out from underneath of the State Highway 205 US 80 right-of-way. Again, opportunity to complain about TxDOT. For years, they said, no big deal, put your water and sewer under our roads, put your water and sewer in our right-of-way, we don't mind. Well, they've really changed their mind here over the last 10 to 15 years, where they've started to say, we really don't need your water line underneath our stuff. You go get out on the edge. You go over outside of our right-of-way. Go buy your own easement outside of our right-of-way. And if we were to make Nash on the state system, we would have that problem and we'd have to deal with that issue. So we need to survey all of that. We need to make sure we tie down all of our distances. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I want to show you how intricate it is. This is the scope that we're going to take to City Council soon. Our Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation has seen this. So we do all of these steps. Sorry, let's see if I can get this thing to move. There we go. I got a project review committee. I got community engagement. I've got survey, environmental services, franchise utility coordination, traffic analysis. We're going to make a whole traffic model because TxDOT won't accept anything we do without a detailed travel model that says here's how everybody's moving around. I also need that for quiet zones because my friends at Union Pacific are going to say, well, you prove to me that how this traffic is going to move and how much backed up all of these are going to be whenever you do that. Sorry, trying to get this thing to move. Here's some more quiet zone analysis, traffic counts for Union Pacific, diagnostic memos. Here's the conceptual design side of it. How many alternatives are we going to have and what sort of detail are they? Ooh, the conceptual opinion of probable costs. Wow, I really want that right. I need to figure out, did I just say a $15 million idea, a $25 million idea, or a $5 million idea? We think that if our paddock board is willing to borrow $3 to $5 million, well, if we can really get grants on this thing, then we ought to be able to leverage around $15, $18 million on grants associated with this project, which was the whole goal of our 2019 county bond program. So we're going to keep working on that part of it. We'll have a report at the end of it, and really that report isn't the engineering, right? That report says we all kind of agree on the idea of what we're doing, and now we're ready to go forward and really do some intense engineering to land this thing. So don't look at task 11 and say, touchdown, we're done. That is only intended to say, yeah, the technical folks really think that this is the option we ought to go chase, right? Now, moving on, because I got a lot of projects going on. Charles is working with Mark Thacker. He's the architect on the British Museum. We've shown you bits and pieces of this in the past. This is the current rendering for the outside of that building. Should look great, giant British flag hanging off the front of it. We're excited about the design. We're excited about how we're moving forward here. And we are getting closer every day to going out to bid on this project. It needs to be coordinated with the South Alley. We've had Ash Lime, which is our urban planning consultant, looking at all of that. This is a map of some of the water and the sewer in the area and how all of that fits together and is arranged. Y'all see we're digging up the North Alley right now. We're going to go dig up the South Alley. South Alley has a variety of challenges, and anybody can tell you that. I got to have dumpsters back there. I've got to have parking back there, I've got to have loading zones back there, and I've got all these overhead electrical utility lines. So let's talk about those for a second. This is a study area that we established, and you can see, well, maybe it's not so easy to see, but the white rectangle that is the roof of the Chapman building. It's the third building over from Francis. And I've got overhead electrical lines that if you go up on the fire escape right now, it's really not so hard for somebody to reach out and say, hey, I could just about hit that with a golf club. And so we really don't think, and from the construction guys we've talked to, we really don't think we can effectively build that building without taking those power lines down. So the power lines are a bit troublesome anyway. And remember, we're building this giant town square on the south side of the railroad track. So it really makes South Alley a place we want to have looking a lot better. So what we said was, okay, let's hire an electrical engineer as an expert to kind of go through this, study all that, figure out what needs to happen with electrical lines. We think that there's going to be a good chance that we could coordinate this with the construction of the BFTS Museum. So we've coordinated the electrical equipment replacement with Encore. We identified locations for new equipment. We think we'd have a city contract to install conduit along the South Alley, again, between Francis and Virginia. We'll have to do, and this is really a major one, is the connections to all the businesses, right? So right now, one of the limiting factors in any old downtown, and it's particularly true in our downtown, is we haven't had business owners necessarily say, man, I'm going to invest in upgraded electrical, right? So if you're going to reuse a building, you need to go through and take wiring. So the Anderson building is an example of this. You got a bunch of wiring from the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. How much of that is up to date? Well, you always have this chicken and egg thing, right, of am I going to replace the wiring inside of the building if it just connects to something that's kind of sketchy on the outside of it? So what we're doing here is we're saying, you know what, if we're going to drop all of that, we're going to get in and we're going to at least get all of these business owners the proper wiring, modern wiring coming in. Most of them will need us to put a transition panel in there. And again, I'm not the electrical guy, but if you imagine I've got a 1962 panel, right? I can't just hook new wires into that. I got to have a transition panel between the two. Now I hope that some of our business owners will say, hey, this is my chance to go ahead and rewire. If they do, great, we can coordinate that with them. If they don't, then we'll have a transition panel between the two so that I've got fire safety going between the two. Anyway, I say all that to say it makes our downtown a place that's more receptive to private investment whenever we do this project. And we're already seeing that on the North Alley where we've done a couple of things like that. So again, we have to eliminate the overhead electrical lines for the museum construction, and it will improve the aesthetics of South Alley, clear up where we can do things, and again, provide a better entrance to the town square. We'll be doing telecom down there also, and so hopefully that will benefit internet speeds and that sort of thing down there as well. Right now, we think that we may be I've talked to 2 different contractors who would say, yeah, you know what, we should bid those together, and we should bid dropping the electrical lines and the BFTS Museum at the same time. So as we get closer to that, you guys will see that and have a chance to learn about that. I would call that extremely expensive. We already had a pretty hefty estimate for the cost of building the museum. We're going to get an updated cost estimate in soon for that, and then dropping the utility lines. That could be $3 million, right? So I got a big expensive thing to worry about in order to accomplish that. So lots going on down there in the South Alley and Town Square. So partnerships, this is the Anderson building circa, gosh, I'm not sure when. That looks like cars. Who wants to help me guess from the age of those cars what year that photo was taken? I'm going to call that early 60s maybe? Mid-60s?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Still got
Yeah,
one
there you go. Awesome.
like that.
Oh, yeah, all right, very good, yeah. So here's an older picture of the Anderson building, and we think that, and by the way, you can see the transformers in the back of that photo behind the building that are still there. And so one of the things we're doing on our North Alley project is that particular set of transformers are coming down and being relocated somewhere on a piece of land that Charles will be buying. Luis Pena is the owner of that building, and we're working with him on several different things, and Charles could write you a book on all of the neat stuff happening out there. Remember, this is our one that will be lofts on 2 of the floors, boutique hotel on 1 of the floors, restaurant and retail on the first floor, and then the basement floor they want to use for some restaurant purposes as well. I think the Griffith building is actually coming along faster, and you can see there's already some scaffolding out there, right? So they had the rear of that building collapse, and then they've got some supports on one side of the building. Part of our strategy is that we're going to allow them to use that city vacant lot there as an outdoor dining area. So instead of making that open public park, The thought is that we can probably get a better restaurant downtown if we allow them to have a outdoor dining courtyard, and we can use that vacant lot for that purpose. So you'll see that transitioning here over the next few weeks and months. Here's the Lyric building. This is, again, the same owner. So, again, Charles is working extensively with him to make this rework happen. Just got a graphic in yesterday that shows, well, wait a minute here. This was just paint over a front, right? So this is the old Charles Whitaker theme of, you know, if you got something ugly, you could just paint it and make it look good, you know?
Don't move, paint it.
There you go. So it turns out they painted some of this mural on top of some windows. And those are just painted windows, right? So those aren't really the real windows. So we've got a little battle plan going for how we need to open up those windows that are the real windows, let light into the building, and then allow us to kind of redo some of those movie posters in a different place to make it an updated version of that. So that's coming along real nice as well. Facade improvement program, we're doing about 150 annually, trying to get that done. Lots of projects going on. Again, I'm not going to detail all of those. Occasionally, we'll ask you guys to get involved, but this is primarily a paddock board project. They funded Buford Drugs. Here's what it looked like back in the Wayback Machine. Here's what it looks like now. That's where Terry Barber does his tanning, right? Is that where you go for a tan? So here's a little sketch of the existing conditions, and they're going to be trying to take some parts of this stuff out. Oh, there, sorry. Hey, who remembers that building? It used to be right there. So that owner was offered a facade grant. They got a little nervous about taking it. They said, well, let's get started on renovating the building and see what we got. And as soon as they started in on that building, everybody looking at it said, oh, no, no, do not renovate that building. That is a hazard, and it is going to fall on you. And there just wasn't enough salvageable structure in that building to keep it up. So it's been demolished, obviously, and they're working on something new there. I would say that we're going to probably come to you guys in the next few weeks or months and say, look, we went from I don't want to say put lipstick on a pig. We went from, you know, let's enhance it and make it pretty and take that historic structure and do something nice with it, to we had to demolish it, and now we're really going to rework this thing. So I think there's an opportunity for you guys to be involved, maybe with just a little bit of property tax rebate to these guys, so that as they come in and do this project, they can say, well, okay, at least I'm going to get some money back out of my property taxes for a few years. And we don't really quite know what that deal might be. I think also there's some sidewalk improvements that we can do around this building. If you go out there now, there's obviously all paved out there already, but we could make a nicer set of sidewalks and clean up the walkway around it a little bit. So I think they can make a nice building. Charles will guide them gently. They need a lot of guidance on what a good building will look like, but I think we'll get there, and the paddock board, I think, will make an investment in it, and then we'll come back to you guys at a future meeting and say, hey, can we get some number of years of TIRZ money rebated to these guys so that they can feel a little bit more comfortable with this now very hefty investment that they have to make. And by the way, the use is they think they can fill 5,000 square feet with medical. They believe there's enough demand for medical offices in this town that they can fill that up. And so we've challenged them with, well, we'd really rather not make an investment in this building without knowing who's going to be in it. So we asked them to go try to get some letters of intent from the doctors they've been talking to. They said, I will go work on that side of it. And then Charles and I are working on, how might we structure the partnership with this project. Any questions about that? Okay. Here's the little sketch of sidewalk and how we can pretty up sidewalk. Moving on, town square development. So this was a big, big effort, and we've had KSA really hitting home runs for us on this thing. They've done a very good job moving it forward. The photographs here kind of give you a hint about where we ended up on it, and I'll talk you through that as we go through this PowerPoint here. So why? Competitive environment amongst regional cities. Maybe that's the most important point, right? if we want to say that, hey, we're a leader and come to our downtown because it's the best downtown, you got a lot of options, right? You can go to Rockwall, you can go to Grapevine, you can go to downtown Dallas, you can go to downtown Plano, you can go to downtown Frisco. You got a lot of downtowns, and I didn't even mention any of the east towns, right? You can go to downtown Tyler, blah, blah, blah. You got a lot of options, a lot of competition for quaint, old, nice downtown. How are we gonna make ourselves really stand out and really be amazing? And all of these points are thoughts about how we make ourselves a real, true destination point. Whoops. So here's a tour that we did down in Houston, and it was really a great gathering opportunity to look at different ideas. That's the Rice campus, and I show that little corner shot right there to say, basically the idea that council gravitated to as we were showing these images to council was a combination of saying, okay, they really like the uses you get with the modern, I built it from scratch, I planned it effectively so I could really have restaurants, retail on the first floor, I can have offices on the second floor, I can have multifamily on the third and fourth floors and that sort of thing, because that really makes a downtown seem like it's alive, right? So in our case, you might have active uses that would be a library, senior center, community center. Those might be some on the first floor, some on the second floor. And then you might have some restaurants and retail on the first floors, along with some other civic uses on the first floor. And above that, multifamily. Well, it's really hard to take old buildings and magically make them all really work well for that. We've got one, the Anderson building, that we're kind of get that idea into. Then another thing they liked was this shot of the Rice campus, but that seems very sterile, right? But when I stand in the middle of some of these old university mall type areas and the commons that are on universities, you say, wait a minute, somebody really planned this for a lot of outdoor activity, right? I've got maybe 300 foot between building face and building face. I've got a long open area. I can fill that thing up with a lot of people for a concert. I can fill that up with a lot of activity and really have a pleasant area where people are going back and forth without automobiles. And so remember, one of the ideas for a long time has been a square, and within that one square block, you got a park in the middle, and then you just surround it with activity. And that's the traditional Texas downtown square, right? I go to Waxahachie, I got a courthouse in the middle, I've got a block, and then I walk around shops that are all on the outside of that. Well, that means that I'm going back and forth against traffic all the time, right? So I go up to the Denton Square. I walk around the Denton Square. I got to watch my kids and make sure that we're not getting hit by a car as we're walking around the square and enjoying whatever shopping we might do or restaurant we might go to in that square. So the idea is, well, wait a minute, I can flip that and I can make it so that a lot of my activity and businesses are in this protected zone. So I've got a side for parking, I got a side for the roadway, I got a side where people are accessing, but they can get into the middle of something like an old style university mall and allow themselves to move around without having the car be part of it. So what does that look like when you apply all those ideas to our city? So we haven't shown this around a lot because we've been concerned about interfering with land acquisition, but Charles is rolling on land acquisition, and we've got letters out to people impacted by this. We labeled our British Museum this time with the British flag, so you can kind of see that for orientation. You can see the word South Alley on there, and the railroad tracks are sort of right in the middle there. There's some red that says surface parking. We're trying to acquire that land from Union Pacific right now. And then you can see on the left-hand side where it says Francis, and you can see on I said that wrong, but anyway, on the west side it's Francis, on the east side it's Adelaide. So the idea is, let's have a very large town square, and let's have no streets in the middle of it. So imagine going Newton to Broad, Francis to Adelaide, and having no streets all in the middle of that. That means I can put building footprints around the outside of it, and I've got a big interior green area that we get to plan and figure out what to do with that. So in this particular case, I want you to think about my distances here. From Francis to Adelaide's about 600 feet. If I have a 150-foot building footprint on either side, that means I've got 300 feet of green between the two buildings. And that turns out to be a very standard distance that you see in outdoor type venues. And we think that's going to make a world of difference there. That spine going down the middle is where Catherine is right now. And we would just utterly get rid of Catherine. No more Catherine, right? There'd be no Grove between Francis and Adelaide. There'd be no Cottage between Francis and Adelaide. There'd be no Rochester between Francis and Adelaide. And then you can see in blue the building footprints. I believe that we've got 900 foot of green from interior space going north to south, 300 feet running east to west. And so what we'll be doing is, and then you can see the surface parking recommendations there. Hard to get excited about surface parking, but by golly, we need some parking, right? And so there's a whole parking study identified in here about what we would do. Again, Charles is leading that effort for us, and we're sending out letters with a group called Heinecker Land Services, working on acquiring all of that land. And I guess I'd say that's just motoring right along. And we'll have unhappy people come to talk to us. Some of the people who are residents out there, I think we're acquiring 4 houses. We've already had discussions with those folks, and I think some of them started off utterly terrified, and now they're starting to realize, well, this isn't the worst thing in the world. I get a big fat check, I get relocation assistance, and you know, they kind of see the vision for this, and they say, well, all right, I can handle that. We're going to build something great for Terrell. And it doesn't necessarily go down easy, but it's, I think, a great opportunity for us to work with a large blank slate, and this makes us leader of the community. I'll tell you one of the interesting things at City Council, and I may have said this to some of y'all already, you know, we came forward to City Council and we said, well, here's the light version. Here's the lightest touch and the smallest version of the idea. And then we said, here's the big idea, right? This is the biggest version of it. And we really said, look, council, you're just going to have to make a decision here about how aggressive do you want to be? Do you want to be doing something that's a game changer for Terrell and utterly and completely unique amongst cities in Texas? This will be a one-of-a-kind thing. And they all jumped in on the idea that, nope, do not do it small. Go do it big. Go do the aggressive version of the idea. That's a lot of land to acquire. I think we have 60 parcels to acquire that we're working through that process. And in a way, that's like saying, great, I'm glad you said go big. Staff will do it. We'll run with it. We love go big. On the other hand, what it also means is it's going to go slower, you know? And so we've been warning council about this. The bigger it is, the more expensive it is, and the harder it is to get built. And the slower that you have to do it. But that's okay. We're already making good progress on it, and I think we'll have a good program here. You look like you're about to ask me a question. Yeah.
Okay, I guess to the left here on the drawing there at Francis Street, where it says Francis Street.
Yes.
That private development opportunity, how much space is that going to be for something?
That's really just a city block right now. That's everything between Grove, Cottage, Medora, and Francis. There's kind of a large size block there. That block is probably 300 by 450.
Okay.
And so that's, you know, now it's all broken up into individual landowners, right? And so they're either going to cooperate and do something great, or they're going to all do their own little thing. And, you know, now where it's white and where it says private redevelopment opportunity, we're just saying, look, we can't do everything. Private sector's going to have to do something there. And you remember about 1.5 years ago, we went through and we rezoned all of this, right? We want to get the zoning done first. So now when somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to build in any of these areas, well, there's a whole set of rules that tell them how to do it, what to do, and it's more of a downtown flavor. And we're already having pushback on that, right? So I'll use the example of the old Napa building, which is on the corner of Rochester and Virginia. I've got a steady stream of people coming in and saying, hey, I want to use that to repair cars. And the answer is, well, that's against the zoning. You're going to have to figure out what to do and how to renovate that building so that it's not a auto repair shop anymore. You got a challenge. Go figure out how to use that building for something else. And, you know, so far nobody's done it, and it's an empty building. And frankly, I hate to say it this way, but that's okay. You know, it's okay if some landowners aren't getting rent right now because they have this wonderful opportunity where 5 years from now, they're going to start saying to themselves, holy cow, look what I'm next to. This is awesome. This is great. I was talking to City Council about this Tuesday night, and I said, look, this also tells you, and this, by the way, is kind of a preview of a couple of PowerPoint slides from now, but the map's a good time to talk about it. Drive up State Highway 34, and notice that as you're going north, right before the bridge, right over on your left, it looks like there's a curb cut ready for something, okay? Well, that's where Rochester is supposed to plug in, okay? So if we're gonna do this project, I probably need to build Rochester from State Highway 34 to Adelaide and make it really a great concrete street and make it right and get all that water. You see there's a giant amount of water that runs down Rochester right now. Well, that's an expensive project, but if I'm gonna drain all of this, and if I'm gonna get cars off of State Highway 34 to access all of this, I probably need to build Rochester to Adelaide and make that sort of a grand entryway. I gotta go in and take Adelaide, Broad, Francis, Newton, and I can't let them be little tiny asphalt roads with open drainage on them. That's not gonna work for this kind of development. We've gotta come up with price tags and make sure that we have enough money to make that ring of streets concrete. Now, I can't just build those concrete streets. If I'm building the underground storm drainage for all of those, boom, immediately everybody up here thought, gosh, don't you have to extend that a little bit? Don't you have to go down an extra block here, there, wherever, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, we're gonna end up doing that as well. So there's a lot of challenges with getting that done. Because we've picked the bigger option, we're gonna have to methodically go through a step of saying, okay, first it's land acquisition, then it's demolition, then it's drainage, then it's road building, then it's or water and sewer and roads, and telecom and all that sort of good stuff. We got work to do to get that chunk of it done before we go in there and start having fun with building library, building community center, building senior center. We think that means partnerships are a big part of it. So let me hop on to that part. Did I answer your question, sir? Okay. Phase one, I talked about a lot of this, next 5 years. Acquire the land, infrastructure assessment. We've got a work scope for that we're working on with the developer. I'll show you a little bit of that here in a minute. Standards for the town square development. I'd say architectural styles are going to be absolutely important. Right now, we have really good rules on the use because of that new zoning, right? But what do I not have? Well, we've never really been the kind of city that said, we're going to have architectural standards, pal, and we're going to really enforce them and make them good. Well, one of the things we need to do here is we need to create a set of architectural standards and impose it on all of those private development opportunities. So you're not just grabbing this, that, or the other. Everybody's got to do certain things. Community input, again, incredibly important. We need a developer to help us partner with this. And again, master plan for city facilities in this particular area. Phase two, again, more public-private partnering, more financial partners, coordinating with the marketing of it, executing all of this. And again, phase three, we put 10 to 15 years. Central Park, that's a 15-year project. We say somewhere in this presentation that the deck park in downtown, the deck park in down, Clyde-Warren Deck Park, we say, oh, well, that was an 8-year project. Well, actually, the Clyde-Warren Park that's out there now was phase one. And there's a phase two deck that's coming soon where they're gonna put a fountain and blah, blah, blah. So Clyde-Warren Deck Park isn't an 8-year effort. Clyde-Warren Deck Park is a 25-year effort because they're gonna add a second deck to that thing. So again, we need community support. We gotta keep going out to the community and keep reminding everybody, why are we doing this? What are we doing this for? We're doing this so that we are creating an anchor for Moore Avenue, right? Moore Avenue is a little teeny tiny commercial strip, and it's really not big enough to make everybody from the region come to downtown Terrell, because even if it was as great as it could possibly be, it's really only one street from Rockwall to Virginia, okay? So we want more, and I need to anchor downtown with something else great. And that's what the town square allows us to do. I've also got a neighborhood that anybody would tell you has been neglected and suffered over the years and doesn't look like the greatest neighborhood in Terrell. Well, what am I going to do to keep it property values high in that neighborhood and keep people reinvesting in that neighborhood over time, put the best public amenity in Terrell in that neighborhood. And that's part of the philosophy, right? And you go back to the old north-south thing. Well, when we do this, we're making an anchor for a neighborhood, and that neighborhood will always have good property values. And that's part of the commitment of what we want to do here. So that's vision and continuing the investment on it. And again, just being patient about it. So what are we putting in it, right? So what are those buildings actually going to have? In 2017, we did a needs assessment, long-range plan for our library. 2019, we did a little bit more work on it and figuring out what to put where. The idea here for our next steps is to do again, not just library, but also a senior center. Does it need to be an entrepreneur center? Does it need to be a community center? When we say community center, what does that even mean, right? So I would encourage you to think about the places out there these days where you can say, well, you know what, I want to rent a room. We're going to nickname it a makerspace, and I'm renting a room because it's got a bunch of sewing equipment in it, or it's got a 3D printer in it, or it's got this robotics equipment in it, and I'm renting something I can use for more than just that one thing. Gymnastics, whatever it might be. So those turn into be very, very important elements for folks as a community grows, because people want an activity. People want to be able to go do something, but people are choosing more and more. They don't want to invest in that in their house, right? They don't want or have the time, money, effort to put a 3D printer at their house. They want to be able to come to a library or a community center and use that. So we're going to go look at more of these. We're going to do some tours on this. I'm going to take the library board out to take a look at some of these things and figure out who's doing the cutting edge thing. If we want to brand ourselves as a community that's devoted to learning, if we want to attract people to our town that are interested in learning and interested in supporting their school district with kids who are, drugged to the library and enjoying learning, we got to provide a venue for that. And that's what part of our commitment to library and community center does. We need to update our space assessments. One of our studies says about 84,000 square feet of library community center space. That was really done without thinking we were going to relocate the senior center. But frankly, I feel responsible for caretaking that beautiful building over there. And if you've been in the first floor of it, yeah, that's not really a great place for a senior center, right? So I got to get the seniors moved out and get them into a location that makes more sense. So clearly, Town Square is the place to do that. Again, site plan, furniture, floor plans, conceptual design, all that sort of good stuff. Maureen Arndt is our library consultant, community center consultant. She's done great work in different places. So you got to think of KSA as the engineering firm that's creating the template and creating a blank space for people to work within. Some of that's going to be their work to get the park planning done, but part of that is going to be saying, okay, here's a footprint for community center, library, city civic facilities, and we'll have a series of different architects like Maureen Arndt come in and fill up that space and say, okay, here's what we're going to do with it. So we want to advance both those at the same time. We want to do that with some marketing brochures as well. We think library in particular is a great opportunity to do some fundraising. This is really the model we have with the British Museum, right? We're building a shell and we're telling the British Museum to go out and raise money to fill the shell. Same thing here. We're going to take more responsibility as a city to build our library and fill that, but we really feel like a great library community center can attract a lot of private investments, and we're going to be trying to do that with some marketing brochures to get people to contribute to different things at the library, senior center, community center. Oh, sorry. Man, this all looks complicated. How are we keeping track of our money to make sure all of this is financially going to make sense? One of the things that we'd like to change about what we do, and I don't think anybody here remembers this name, but Larry Klein is the first person who helped us set this up. There used to be a firm called Schrader & Klein. Schrader was George Schrader, former city manager of Dallas. Klein was Larry Klein, and he started the first public improvement district in the city of Dallas up in the uptown area. And they, both retired from their respective gigs, and they started a little firm that went around consulting and helping people start tax increment districts and public improvement districts and that sort of thing. So we used them as a consultant for quite some time. They both kind of aged out and retired, and then we took that on as staff. Hal did work on it, I did work on it, John Ronsvall did work on it, TIRZ is doing work on it. We really want to get a pro in here to be writing our reports all the time. I owe the county reports on a regular basis. I owe the comptroller reports on a regular basis. We want to make sure our budget is budgeted correctly every year, and we go through the audit process every year correctly. So we've got a lot of reporting requirements, and I'm going to add some strength there. So P3 Works is a group that we're going to recommend. Some of y'all know we're working on creating several additional new tax increment refinance districts and public improvement districts. When we do that, we want P3 Works to be our partner in that and help us make sure that we are filling out comptroller reports for all of them, reporting to the county all the time, and they do a whole bunch of good work with that. We're negotiating contracts with these folks right now, and we can bring them forward to you here soon. They're really the leader in this field. They're doing this for about 30 different cities in Texas and outside of Texas, and have done a very good job making sure that all of their clients meet all the rules and all the nickels are in the right place and none of the nickels are misused, okay? And I think that's a very important thing. We're getting very complicated as a city. Not only do we have the largest rural TIF in Texas and the one that you're watching over, but I would say that we're going to add between 3 and 4 additional tax increment zones in the next little while, and several public improvement districts with that as well. So I want to make sure that we've got a partner on the financial analysis side that can really keep that going very, very well. Part of that being because some of those that we create, not the TIRZ, will borrow money, and we want to make sure that we're going through credit rating analysis with those correctly as well. What else do we need to do? I just showed you a gargantuan amount of work over a 10-year period, okay? And so we feel like one of the things that we've never really embarked on as a city with the tax increment refinance zone is constraining our costs with engineers and planners and consultants by having somebody who is a project manager within the city of Terrell. So some of y'all know TIRZ was our project manager that we hired out of our water department to help us run the construction of the police facility. That turned out great, and we got cost savings off of our contractors because I had a guy in city staff making sure it was coordinated, making sure we worked through that process very well. I think this is a little bit bigger, a little bit more complicated, and it's everything from library to town square. It's the complete streets, it's the roads, it's the water, it's the sewer, it's the drainage. If I only have consultants working on that, I'm not going to save a lot of money, right? I got to have somebody in-house making sure all of that gets done correctly. So we think that we've got a point here in the tax increment refinance zone world where it probably makes sense for us to spend some money on staff with our TIRZ that we've not done before. They have to strictly be working on delivering capital projects, and that's what we think this project manager could do. This project manager would help deliver all of the capital projects I just described to you, okay? So everything I just said, that project manager would be working for Charles Fenner and making sure that every day they're coordinating how all of this stuff fits together, so I don't go over here and build something and then say to myself, well, how come that's 3 feet off? Why is that wrong? I don't go out there and say, well, we weren't really watching our money very well as that contractor was doing things, and somehow the project got over budget. I want my project to stay on budget. I want to come in below budget on different things, and I can do that if I've got an in-house project manager. So this is a big idea for us, but I think it's well worth it, and I think that if you ask yourself if I'm building $30 million worth of stuff over a multi-year period, that probably really will be a lot more than $30 million. Do I need somebody is $300,000 a year well worth it? Yeah, that's going to be well worth it to make sure that we can save money and be efficient in all of those operations. Here's our FY22 TIRZ budget. Didn't spend a lot of time on this last year because we wanted to just hold off. Y'all didn't meet since August, and so now it's been all of this time. We've been busy not spending money, so that's a good thing. Our revenue this year, these are the numbers we've got. The TIRZ, from the city side of it, will put about 1.4 million in. The county will put about 400,000 in. That's going to be just under $1.8 million. The expenses, the first four are the reimbursements, and those are sort of by formula, right? We track how much money comes from each of those properties, and that's the money that goes out. So Market Center gets 155, Bucky's 93, Crossroads gets 623,000, Cinecola about 10,000. So those are that's the outbound money. That's the checks we've got to write going out of the tax increment refinance district. And those are agreements that we've already paid for, right? That library community center consultant, that's a new contract that would be about $90,000. I'm going to ask the TIRZ to pay for that. The downtown project office, well, I told you it was $300,000 a year. It's April. We're not spending $300,000 on that this year. And frankly, it's going to be hard to spend even half of that, but we did budget it at a half year, and so I put that $150,000 there. I'm going to ask you guys to endorse that. Town Square Master Plan, this is the next step to say, okay, what drainage do I really have to build? What water system do I have to build? What sewer system do I have to build? The next step of that's going to be around $150,000. I'm going to ask the TIRZ to endorse that. And then we've got a couple of sidewalk grants that are in that area. I didn't spend a lot of time and detail on that because we're always trying to hustle for the next sidewalk grant, but we need to do the engineering of a sidewalk grant, of a couple of different sidewalk grants, and I need a little bit of engineering funds to do that as well, and that'll add a couple of sidewalks to our downtown area. Our debt/reserve number, y'all know that we borrowed money in FY21 in order to finance British Museum and some of the other things and get started on that work. That reserve is $344,000, and that means our expenses in FY22 would be about 1.7, and our total revenue would be just a little bit higher than that. Again, I don't know that we'll really spend all that money in those last four categories because I don't know that the consultant's going to do all of that work just in FY22. Downtown project office, even if I said go today, Charles, go hire people, might take you more than 5 minutes to hire somebody and hire the right person. Likewise, Town Square Master Plan, that 150 will bleed over into FY23 a little bit. But again, I like budgeting for, you know, a little on the high side and then come back in later and say, hey, we didn't quite have to spend that. So that is a look at budget. And again, those last four items are all items that at upcoming meetings, I'm going to come forward and say, hey, can we pass a resolution in order to get that done? Any questions about all that? Okay. So how does all that work together over a multi-year period? This is the simplest timeline, but I did kind of want to give everybody just, okay, let's back up and think about timeline here. In FY22 and FY23, we're doing community input, we're doing planning, we're establishing partnerships. I told you about that technical review committee. I got to get the technical review committee up and running. I got to make sure I have town hall meetings and then working on that land acquisition element of it. So that's FY22, FY23. FY23, FY24, we start making this transition to things you're going to see in the real world. And the first thing you're going to see is just demolition. If I buy something and I need to knock that baby down right away, I do not need a bunch of vacant buildings hanging out, right? So just like we did with the old Freedom to Worship Church, when we purchased that piece of land through the, that wasn't y'all, that was through city property tax. But when we bought that, we got in there right away and we demolished it because I don't need a bunch of vacant stuff. So anything you see us purchase, we're going to say, okay, Charles, let's get right on that. Let's get that thing demolished. Engineering will gear up more and more, particularly as we get our finger on, okay, here's exactly what we need to build with Adelaide or Broad or Newton or that sort of thing. I've got a couple of places, and I won't detail all of it right now, but so in order to acquire the parking lot owned by Bethlehem Baptist Church, which is at the corner of Francis and Newton, we're really going to have to deal gingerly with a church because you can't condemn a church, right? So I've got to really deal with a big smile. I've already met with Pastor Rollerson from Bethlehem Baptist Church, and this isn't public, but we're not in executive session. I'm sure y'all can keep it under your hat, so to speak. We're going to be working on parking lot rework with those guys. We're going to take vacant land that they own south of Newton, and we're going to be saying, okay, if you can do this if you'll voluntarily allow us to do this with the parking at the corner of Newton and Francis, then here's what the city will do for you over here with this parking lot over there. And that's just the kind of deal making we're going to have to do from time to time. And again, engineering, securing partnership funding, making sure that we've got other people willing to pay for things. Sometimes that's going to be private sector. Sometimes I'm going to go beg the county. Sometimes I'm going to go beg regional transportation councils. Sometimes I'm going to go beg Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation to get all of that over the edge. Just that interior green space. Once we own that, and once that space is planned out, listen, we can immediately go to our friends at Texas Parks and Wildlife, and we can say, hey, for this portion of it, can we get a grant to build a city park here? They're going to say, sure, absolutely, you can get a grant to build a city park. Am I going to build a perfect park? The most they'll give me is $750,000. So if I do $750 from the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation, I do $750 from a grant from them, at least I have $1.5 million to spend in the square or the rectangle, right? Will we have our ultimate? No, we need to build a template within which we can work. So anyhow, that's just an example of partnership funding. FY24, FY25 and beyond, that's what I mean by FY25 plus. Again, more community input, refining the engineering, securing partnership funding. We're gonna start borrowing at some point, right? We're gonna come back, probably not in FY23, but definitely by FY24, we're gonna say, hey, this is the next round of stuff that we need to borrow money for in order to get this thing moving forward. And again, building some of that core infrastructure. We wanna make sure we know what we need to do and fund it correctly so that we can get over the edge with it. So that's a very long presentation. I covered 2 agenda items. Pardon me for that, but that's a lot going on. You're right to observe, Chairman, at the start that this is a lot of work over the last 6 months or so, and we do need to start meeting a little bit more regularly to get you guys in the swing of things here. So, any other questions or concerns?
Well, moving it just with that exact topic you just said, 4.3, discuss upcoming meetings schedule.
Awesome. Dawn, I think you got a couple of notes on what we might do. We're all going to have that ceremonial moment where we think, ooh, I wonder if I can meet on that day. So,
yeah, the first proposed date is Friday, May the 6th. And then the next one would be Friday, June 10th. And Friday, August 12th. That's all I have right now, so far.
I have no idea.
I'm available for the May or the June dates, either one.
Okay, yeah, if you want to just take a look at them whenever you get back to the office and email me and let me know.
Okay.
Those work for you.
If you'll shoot us emails,
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
say these are the proposed dates. Works out. I've got a boss that tells me what to do.
All at 9 a.m., Don?
tells me where to go.
All at 9 a.m.?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Those are 9 a.m. Fridays. Yes. Yes. In order to get a little bit more of a routine going, we thought, well, let's just try to lock in 9 a.m. on Fridays and just have a regular sequence on that. So, okay. So if Fridays at 9 aren't good, then yell at Dawn. If they are good, say something nice to me. How about that?
The only thing I have, every month, there's a mayor's meeting in Kaufman on a Friday morning at 8 o'clock. So as long as it's not the 3rd Friday of the month.
Okay.
You know that.
Okay.
It's a standard.
We can double check all that. Awesome. I know that won't be May 6th. May 6th can't possibly be a 3rd Friday.
Okay, can we move into number 5? I was told there's going to be a short one, hopefully shorter than the last one. Adjourning to executive session in accordance with Section 551 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the following: deliberations regarding real property, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations.
I'm going to take my cue from Dawn as she turns off equipment over there. Yeah. She actually sends a message to Elon Musk, and he has to hand crank it, right? Really cumbersome project. I don't know why we set it up like that.
Here we go. Reconvene into regular session and consider action, if any, items discussed in executive session. Then if nothing, then we can adjourn.